My name is Nat Bullard, and I'm here to help us host a session talking about the road to green transports. But before we do that, we should probably develop a little bit of context as to what green transports are. Really moving goods, services, people around the world is an incredibly broad category. All of it has the potential to be made greener, safer, more efficient, more equitable. Today, we're going to be discussing more specifically, I think, things that are happening on the surface. So before I begin that and hop in with this very esteemed panel that I have, I want to provide a bit of context on what's really happening, literally in this case, on the ground, and thinking about greening of transportation. And I think we have to begin that with a look at the way that things are energized. So there have been revolutions and evolutions happening in the way that vehicles are energized since more than a century now. But the most important thing happening in the last 10 years is really the way that the lithium-ion storage battery has managed to move its way into transportation. So something that began for the camcorder, was deployed for the laptop and the mobile phone, now finds itself as potentially the prime mover for surface transport for many different categories of vehicles. In fact, the cost of a battery has come down by 89% in the last decade. And that's manifesting itself across markets in ways that many people, if they're not living in these markets, may not know. So about 4% of passenger vehicle sales are now electric, but closer to 40% of 2- and 3-wheeler transportation is now electric. And less than 1% of the heavier classes of vehicle are in that category. We're also seeing that this is not just driven by consumer preference, but by real competition on what they call the cost of ownership. So the total cost of ownership basis for an electric vehicle in some categories versus a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle is either competitive or out-competitive. You're now on a better economic basis buying one type of vehicle, an electric, than you are buying some others. But there's so much more to be done in order to make this happen. First, there's moving outside of the smaller vehicle classes towards the larger ones, which we'll definitely be talking about here. There's moving into the supporting structure and infrastructure that helps make all of this possible. Charging, redesigning of cities, building of the depots and the places where vehicles need to go. Of course, scaling up manufacturing. And most importantly, probably on top of that, a sort of policy network in which this all can live and thrive. So I'm delighted to have a good panel here to begin this conversation. And I'm going to ask everyone to come on in series here, and we'll sort of give a sense for where we are. Much as I'm okay at reading bios, I much prefer to hear them from speakers themselves. So Jagdeep, I'm going to begin with you because, as I said, we begin this with the battery. So give us a sense for state of play and where you see things going in terms of this prime mover of greening our transportation.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on that. Clearly the battery is at the heart of the electric vehicle. Right? It's the powertrain that makes the car go. So it's a critical part of this transition. The challenge that we see with the battery is that, as you mentioned, today's EVs are on the order of represent on the order of 4% of the overall market for vehicles. And the question is, what does it take to get it to 20, 30, 40, 50% through the course of this decade? And our view on that is fundamentally the battery has to get better enough to where electrified powertrains can compete with combustion engine-based powertrains. And we believe today that's not the case. We believe that today's batteries, are clearly better than they were 20, 30 years ago, but they can't drive as far on a single charge as combustion engine-based vehicles can. They can't recharge as fast. They're less safe in many ways. They're a lot more expensive than combustion engines. Those are some of the fundamental challenges that we think need to be addressed by batteries. And at the end of the day, we believe that while there are lots of things that need to be done by lots of players, including government, to provide the right incentives, including the infrastructure that you mentioned, charging infrastructure and so on, at the end of the day, the product has to be competitive. It has to be something that customers and consumers want to buy. And one of the biggest challenges we see is is producing batteries that can narrow that gap between combustion engines and EVs. That's our mission. We think over the course of this decade, we will see batteries that are a lot closer to combustion engines than today's batteries. And we think that will fuel this transition into electric vehicles over the course of the decade.
That's fantastic. Thank you. A very concise framing of where we are. Sometimes, I'm in an analytical capacity, obviously. We look at a very dry set of numbers sometimes, but it seems like you're actually a bit sort of, you're looking a bit further out than we are in some cases as to where that real competition is taking place. A 4% market is not yet much of a market. Getting it bigger is going to require quite some work. Brief reminder before I move on, we would love to hear some questions. So my colleagues at the conference will be taking questions and they'll be coming to me. So please send them our way, make them nice and concise. We'll bring them up and ask them as they come in. But Mark, you're in the vehicle market, so I'm going to go to you next. Give me your position on where we are. Jagdeep was very kind to set us up with the batteries. Tell us where we are on vehicles.
Sure. Good morning, Nat. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time to meet with us this morning. My pleasure to be on this panel on such a great and timely topic with Joachim, Jagdeep, and Laurence as well. And when I first heard the title of this panel, I wanted to share great news and where the technologies really are today. And on that, let me maybe just spend a few minutes on what we do at Lion Electric. We're a leader in medium and heavy duty all electric urban trucks and buses with a maximum range of 250 miles on the single charge to Jagdeep's point, where the batteries are today. We purpose built all of our vehicles. We don't do any retrofits, and we are only focused on electric, fully focused on electric. We don't do diesel, no fuel cells, no propane, no CNG, no LNG, and no hybrids neither. We only manufacture and sell 100% electric trucks and buses. And just a step back, Nat, in 2010, we started the development of a proprietary electric transportation platform. And we call it now, the electric skateboard. And that skateboard is the basis for all the new models we bring to market. And since we went public on May 7th of this year, a lot of people are now hearing about Lion and are telling me that Lion is an overnight success, 13 years in the making. And it makes me laugh, but this is true though, because we've been working nights and days for the last 13 years to be where we are today. Lion is real. It's not an aspirational story. We are one of the very few companies that is actually manufacturing and selling electric trucks and buses. At the same time, we are finishing the development of new models that will be commercialized very shortly. We are the leader in electric school buses with over 400 vehicles on the road today and over 13 million kilometers driven or 8 million miles driven since we started selling our first electric school buses in 2016. So 400 is not much, but that was the way to break the ice in the last 5-6 years. And we just started selling our electric trucks a few months ago. We believe electrification is at a very interesting stage today, Nat. More and more electric vehicles are now available at affordable prices with interesting ranges. And it's going to get only better, with a company like, QuantumScape and other companies as well. And at Lion, we currently sell 7 models of electric vehicles, 4 electric trucks, including a 100% electric refuse truck and 3 models of electric buses. And we will market 8 additional electric models over the next 15 months, including an electric ambulance in partnership with the MERS. And by the end of next year, we will have a total of 15 100% electric models, 11 trucks, class 5 to class 8, and 4 electric buses. And on top of that, a total manufacturing capacity of 23,000 electric vehicles per year on both sides of the border, and a fully automated battery plant with a capacity of 5 gigawatt hour per year, being able to manufacture enough battery packs to electrify about 14,000 Lion electric vehicles per year. So for us, Nat, as you can see, the electrification is happening right now as we speak.
Thank you. I enjoy always a story like this. Yes, it's the overnight success that's actually 13 years in the making. And I think we'll return to this because I'm very curious to see, what it was that you saw so long ago in the technology path that made you confident in this. I also feel like you've laid down some model number challenges for Joachim. So you've got to tell me if you've got as many vehicles in planning and as many different classifications. So please give us your position, if you would.
Thank you so much, Nat, and good morning. And thank you for having me on this distinguished panel. I really look forward to a good and constructive discussion on, as Mark put it, this very, very important topic, right? I think from a Volvo Group perspective, we always say that, predictions are difficult, particularly about the future. But one thing that is clear is that transport will increase. And since we are in the transportation business, we need to meet that increasing demand with solutions in the future that are 100% safe, 100% more productive than today, and 100% fossil-free. So in order to reach these 100% fossil-free goals, a shift to electric and electrified transportation is inevitable. Already today, we have thousands of vehicles on the road, electric trucks, electric buses, electric construction equipment, and so on, right? But it doesn't cover all applications, of course, but stepwise, as was indicated, we will be broadening our applications, of course, also to include long-haul trucks in the quite near future then. We will be offering only fossil-free solutions from 2040 and onwards then. From a technology point of view, and it was very interesting to listen to you, Jagdeep, we believe that one size won't fit all then. So, of course, we have battery electric vehicles. Batteries are an ideal solution for some applications. For other applications, primarily real heavy duty, real long transport, we see that also the fuel cell and the hydrogen fuel electric will be important. And we don't exclude also internal combustion engine, of course, fossil free for some niche applications in the future as well. As you touched upon, Nat, we have the chicken and egg dilemma when it comes to the infrastructure that is so important. We recently announced a memorandum of understanding with two other major truck groups in the world of creating a European charging infrastructure. And of course, this new digital green platform that we're jointly creating in the industry will allow for and enable other services as well in the future. Importantly, partnership is the new leadership. We won't be able to do this ourselves. We need to learn, all of us, how to better utilize each other's strengths in the ecosystem. And that includes, as you alluded to, Nat, not only industry, but also policymakers and regulators and so on, right? So in the Volvo Group, we take a full thrust on sustainability in everything we do. And with those introductory words, I hand it back to you, Nat.
Thank you very much. No, you've helped lay the landscape, and I actually do think we're going to talk quite a bit later on about the world beyond the battery. Even those of us in these very analytical capacities can often, we can often overspecify the thing where a trend is moving very, very strongly. But there will be applications, whether at the edge or at the center, that use other powertrains. Well, Laurence, you probably got a slightly different perspective on this, and I would love to hear from you to help us round out our introductions here.
Yeah, many thanks, Matt. And again, it's always a pleasure to be part of Conférence des Amériques in Montreal, Toronto, Miami, everywhere. It's always a pleasure to be part of this family and happy to be on this panel. Green transport, I would say green mobility, is really at the heart of RITP Group strategy. So RITP, we are not a manufacturer. We are a mass transit provider, public transportation provider, operating different mass transit system everywhere in the world, mostly urban mass transit system. And I will say, I will first make a slight comment. The title of this roundtable is Towards Green Transport. Towards green transport means also towards green mobility. And maybe one first idea that I would like to mention. Individual mobility is a disaster for green mobility. So the mass transit mobility is definitely the first shift that we should all envision to reduce dramatically our footprint, carbon footprint everywhere in the world. But second, this, which is of course, with RITP Group every day, this is almost 15 million passengers that are taken our public transportation. So, of course, this is at the heart of our strategy to shift from individual mobility to shared mass transit mobility. Of course, within mass transit mobility, we have different modes of transportation, electrical mode of transportation, such as tramway, metro, driverless metro, whereby we are the leader, and also buses. And in buses, we have traditional diesel buses, and we are making our transition towards clean buses. And as Joachim mentioned, we do not believe that one technology fits all. And basically, we are working very closely with all our public transport authority to see which technology will better serve the local challenges in south of France, in north of France, in Canada, or in Saudi Arabia. And of course, when you talk about EV buses, it's very much efficient from a carbon footprint, but it's not very much efficient in terms of autonomy when you're in Saudi Arabia, whereby it's 50 degrees outside. And so far today, at least today, this technology will not be part of the transition towards green mobility in Saudi Arabia. However, when we speak about London or Paris, for instance, Paris, of course, we are the operator of Paris. We are one of the major operators of the buses in London. In London, we are going into this transition whereby by 2022, so tomorrow, 25% of our fleet, bus fleet, will be fully electrified. In Paris, and overall at RATP Group, we are committed to reduce by 50% our emission between 15 and 25. And this will go notably through the full transition of 100% of the fleet buses in Paris. We are talking about 4,700 buses. And these new clean buses will be 50% electric, 50% biogas. And biogas is also very efficient. So I'm very convinced, as Joachim said, that we have to work on all the technology. And currently, we are also working together with Air Liquide, for instance, on the technology of the future. We see the hydrogen, and what would be today the hydrogen is not from an economic financial standpoint very much efficient for buses, even though Alstom for trains launch hydrogen trains in Germany and tomorrow in France. But so far, a hydrogen bus roughly costs 700k euro. Electric bus cost 500k euro roughly, more or less, and a biogas 250. So still we have some kind of economic equation to solve, and technology equation, of course. And on this one, on the technology, you mentioned that earlier at the introduction of this conference, the challenge of infrastructure. This is a major challenge for all the operators like RATP, because we have to convert 100% of our bus depot to EV depot or hydrogen or biogas depot. And this is also a very good opportunity to rethink the use of the depot and to go from a unique usage to a multi-usage infrastructure depot with real estate and things like that, which makes also greener transportation because multi-usage of our infrastructure. And as you mentioned, as Joachim mentioned, we are also facing, of course, major challenges in terms of economic and political willingness to favor and to boost this new energy. And I mean, I'm very much convinced that by ourselves, RATP, we won't go anywhere. This is together that we will go to greener transportation, and we need definitely to work on all the sources of electric energy that needs to be clean also. And when we're talking about hydrogen, we can have gray or green or yellow or pink or blue hydrogen. So which one we need to go after? When you're talking about EV, if electricity is made from coal, from hydraulic, nuclear, or whatever, the impact is also very much different, very much different. So this is all this global ecosystem that we need together to work on with our politicians.
Very good. Thank you. And a reminder for everyone, please send questions our way. We'll be happy to ask them. So, Laurence, it was extremely helpful because it's really important to have a buyer in this discussion, not just the builder. So I'm grateful for those insights. And I'm going to work back quickly then to both Mark and Joachim. Like, what are you looking for from Lion, from Volvo, when you're talking to them? Like, what does your selection process look like when you think about making a large procurement?
Well, I mean, I think on the buying side, on the supply chain side, right, we have 1,500 professional buyers in the company, in our purchasing organization. So I think it's not only, of course, the specification and the quality of what is sold, but it's also having more and more strategic partnerships with our suppliers in terms of developing the solutions for the future together. So it's less and less of here's a blueprint, please build, and more of, let's co-create together. Coming back to the point that I mentioned before, that partnership is the new leadership, and we need to work together in the ecosystem to make it happen. Then, and then of course all the common, quality, cost, risk, sustainability, etc. Everything applies, of course, right? But I would say more and more these new technologies, and maybe Jagdeep can add more flavor to it later. This going into more and more as we all go into the battery and the battery cells, and we all know the challenge, of course, that we have as an industry in terms of making sure that those minerals are acquired in a sustainable, in an ethical, and at the end of the day, in a circular manner. So those are some of the new challenges, I think.
That's good. And Jagdeep, I want to hear that in a moment. But Mark, let's get your take, how it is for you. And then Jagdeep, I'd like to hear from you on that.
And Nat, the way I get your question, it was also with respect to the, the kind of customers.
Right.
I think, right. That we're looking for, right. The customers are very sophisticated now, and they have many options, right. And in our case, they've been using mostly diesel buses and trucks for all of those years. So they feel very good, obviously, about this technology. They totally control the technology. And they are looking for a reliable technology as well. In terms of trucks and buses, they want to deal, and their mechanics, they want to deal, with axles that they know, braking systems that they know. So we need basically to make it easy for them to do a very smooth transition to electric. And this is, I think, what they are expecting from their suppliers, and we're working with them on this. And that being said, I mean, they need to make money with this. I mean, they used to buy like onesies, twosies, at some point, but now a lot of the fleet operators, they want to go and electrify the whole fleet. And this is, what we are there for as well. So in terms of total cost of ownership, and Nat, you mentioned total cost of ownership, TCO at the beginning, this is the key. I mean, everybody wants to go green, but Laurence, I mean, if you cannot make, money or at least, have a good return on your investment, then you will not do it. And I think transparency with our customers and making sure that, all the assumptions made in the calculation of the TCO is the right one is very, very appreciated from the customer. So the customers, they want to get that. They want to get the good TCO, but also they want to make sure that they're getting the support for everything they're doing. And buying an electric truck or an electric bus is just the beginning of it. Everything else, like the charging infrastructure, if it's electric or any other infrastructure, if it's another technology, also needs to be considered into what we're doing. And this is, what we've been working very hard at Lion to make sure that we have a group called Lion Energy. And Joachim, you have a great group at Volvo, obviously, as well. And I know this is what we're doing. And this is what we need to do to serve very well the customers. I think this is, what they're looking for.
Fantastic. Jagdeep, Joachim sort of stole my question. So I can just pass it right through to you, which is, You talk about your how you do your work in today's supplier network, in today's trade network, and and how you think about developing partners both for the products that for the things you're buying and for the products then that you're selling.
Yeah. So from our standpoint, there's sort of I guess two different parts of the partner spectrum. Right? There's people downstream that we sell our products to that are users of the battery, and then there's people upstream from whom we buy materials that go into our batteries. And obviously, on the downstream side, our customers are companies like Volvo and hopefully Lion and others that basically need batteries to drive the powertrain. We work with them very closely. Obviously, we have a partnership right now with Volkswagen, which owns a number of iconic brands, from Porsche and Audi and VW itself, so across the full spectrum of the automotive sector. But we're not limited to working with VW. We are working with a number of other OEMs as well. And then on the supply side, batteries consist of a number of different materials. There's cathodes, there's anodes, and in our case, there's a proprietary solid-state electrolyte that we use to make our solid-state batteries. But we use standard cathode materials, so we leverage the current supply chain that exists for those materials. As Joachim pointed out, it's going to be important for those materials to use less and less of some of the more complicated materials like cobalt, for example, or even nickel these days is becoming a kind of a constrained material. One of the nice things about our approach is that we are cathode agnostic, which means that we can use nickel-rich cathodes, but we can also use iron-based cathodes. And iron, of course, is very earth abundant and very low cost. So there's opportunities to do that. And then the materials that go into our proprietary electrolyte, which is solid state, which makes the battery possible, those are actually earth abundant materials. So they're already sold in massive quantities to the industry today for various applications. So there's already a big supply chain there. So we think we can leverage those various partnerships, bring it all together to build batteries, as we mentioned, can really address the needs of the mainstream market. And what I'll add there is that Tesla has done a nice job of demonstrating that it's possible to make cars that people want to buy. But the reality is that even the Model 3 is essentially a luxury vehicle. Cars over $50,000 account for less than 2% of the world demand for cars. So if you really want to get into the mainstream, you're going to need to really crack the $30,000 price point in the West, and in China and India it might be more like $10,000. So to get there, you can't have a battery pack that's $10,000 battery pack as a whole vehicle. It needs to be not too much more than that. And so we think that leveraging solid-state technology to get batteries that have greater energy density, greater power density for fast charge, lower cost, really can help the industry as a whole get closer to the goal of making cars that are both greener and desirable.
Thank you. And you raise a nice point that I can put back to Mark and Joachim. Are you both selling luxury vehicles at the moment? Is that your market, or is it, or are you really more competing with the mass?
No, but I think I don't know. I hope Mark is okay if I go first on this one. You can go first next time. But I think we are not in the business of cars, right? We are in the business of production equipment, right? So in fact, the truck has more to do with a stone crusher than it has with a car, right? Because it has to work the whole time. A car, the last time I checked, the average utilization rate of a car is 3 or 4%, right? And the other 96% is standstill. So that's not the case for trucks or as Laurence knows very well, for buses, or for that matter, for construction equipment, right? But I think to build on what Mark said before, I think, of course, the customers, to come back to your question, that looks at TCO, and that is important. That's why you need to have different technologies to offer, as Laurence pointed out, because the customer situation in Saudi Arabia is going to be different than the customer situation in Montreal, right? And a second point is, as also was pointed out, the equipment is one piece of it, but the network, the services, the digital enablers, everything around it is so important when you're running a production machine, essentially, and not a leisure kind of vehicle then. And I think here, the Volvo Group's rich history of soon 100 years and the many thousands of distribution points we have in the world, the various brands that we have, both for buses, we have Nova Bus, we have Volvo Bus, we have Volvo trucks, Mack trucks, Renault trucks, we have JVs with Dongfeng, with Aisha, the scale and the ability we have to cater to different needs of different customers in different geographies is not different. And of course, Prevost in Canada. So yeah, that's where I'm coming. So the answer is no, Nat. We're not selling luxury vehicles. We're selling production equipment from my standpoint.
Yes, if I can just jump in for 1 second on that. So I think, we started this conversation to talk about, how to make an impact on emissions and address the climate issue, right? So there are about 100 million cars, roughly speaking, sold every year. The vast majority of which are still passenger cars, right? So we need to attack that passenger car problem if we really want to make a dent on emissions. And that's where I was referring to batteries as being really key. While TCO is certainly the way that commercial vehicles are purchased, not a lot of consumers do a TCO analysis before they go buy their car. I mean, in fact, I don't know if a Tesla would prove in or any kind of TCO-based analysis, but it is a car people want to buy. And so I think, the role that we think we want to play is really help, those tens of millions of consumer-oriented vehicles that we don't think can electrify without a disruption in batteries. So I think that the battery industry has two challenges. One is in the near term, it just needs to increase capacity to a level where, with conventional lithium ion, to where it can support the forecast that the various auto OEMs are seeing. But then longer term, in the course of the next 4 or 5 years, it really needs to introduce better batteries that can be more competitive with combustion. So that latter problem is the one that we're focused on.
Indeed. Thank you. And I have to say, I do confess, one moment, Laurence, I do confess that I have done a total cost of ownership analysis when buying a car. And the dealers were not that pleased when I tried to do so. Sorry, Laurence, please.
Yes, thank you. Maybe to complement a little bit on what Joachim and Mark said about TCO and in mass transit. So Jagdeep, you mentioned that, of course, individual cars are absolutely critical. That's very right. But in a city, in mega cities, without public transportation, our cities will be dead. So we absolutely also need to focus on how to smooth the mobility in mass mobility in our mega city, and this is completely critical. When we are talking about TCO for a bus, I mean the diesel or EV or hydrogen bus, this is only a very small portion of the total cost. And as RATP, when we have to transform or to rebuild a depot from a diesel to an EV depot, it costs a lot of money too. So basically, and just to give you some figures in Paris, whereby we're gonna have 100% of our fleet bus converted to EV or biogas. Only for the buses, the investment, the capex, roughly represent 1 year of turnover, which is absolutely huge. On top of that, we have to include the transformation of the depot, which is 5, 10, 20 million per depot, depending on the nature of the depot, the complexity, the grid to gate, etc., etc. So the investment is huge, and in public transportation, it's very well known that this is a mobility that is highly subsidized, and therefore to support this transition that is absolutely critical, we need to have the support of all the government. Our public transport authority cannot afford this transition without subsidy, and this is what we can see in Europe with this the new climate fighting plan that has been enacted February 21. That will provide 1 billion to energy transition for European project. This is what we can see in Canada. This is what we can see in the States. So really, this is absolutely critical. And Joachim, you mentioned that we need to have the entire ecosystem completely supporting this transition. We need to have our political supporting that. The end user will not be able upfront to support this from a cost standpoint, this energy transition. And this is not a nice, this is a must. So therefore, this is a political challenge, not only a challenge for our industry, either manufacturer or mass transit operator or battery manufacturer. This is really a political challenge.
Absolutely, and I think this is rightly where we begin to reach the highest point of our conversation, because there's we can think of the physical infrastructure, but there's also the kind of societal willpower, political infrastructure that lives on top of that to make this all happen. So actually, let's look at that a little bit. So, Mark, I'd like your perspective. Like, what's the state of play in your markets? Like, where is the political will right now, and where is the acceptance, enthusiasm for what you're doing? Tell me how it works and what messages are the most powerful when you talk in a regulatory or policy way.
Sure, and Nat, I need to confess, I did the TCO analysis as well.
Yeah,
before buying my electric car, but we're probably one of a kind. So Jagdeep,
I think so.
Yeah, I got your point, and I mean it's the big, the huge difference between B2B and B2C, right?
Correct.
The B2C, most of the consumers will not do that, but B2B, I mean the people will do that, and Laurence, to your point, they will include everything else, like the infrastructure and everything it takes, and I mirror your comment also, which is a good segue to your question, Nat, on the subsidies that is still needed, even if the TCO is favorable. In most of the cases right now, I mean the sticker price is still higher, and then the way you finance the product, and so even if the TCO works well, I mean at the beginning you have a higher sticker price, and Nat, to your question, this is why we need some legislation. So that the governments, I mean, federal level, state level, province level, municipal level also can move forward with what they think is the right solution. And we've seen some of them, like we've seen the ACT in California, for example, doing a great job saying, they clearly made the decision that they will go electric. And it includes, all the medium and heavy duty trucks and also some buses as well. And basically, it's a kind of a credit that you are earning, and then the OEM not getting into the system will at some point need to buy those credits. And, everybody knew that many years ahead. So I think that's one way to go. The other way also is in Canada, for example, Mr. Trudeau decided to invest $2.75 billion for the purchase of 5,000 electric buses over the next 5 years, where they are paying 50% of the sticker price, and this is including the charging infrastructure as well. So I think this is good, and this is for transit buses and also for school buses. I think it's good in Quebec. I mean, $250 million over the next 3 years, which is a very good program. In California, a lot of money as well has been invested, by Governor Newsom. There is also this $5 billion from federal. And I think, all of those measures are short-term measures in the way that, everybody will need to adapt to the way we're doing things now. But, we need like 5-6 years to get there, and to get also the pricing of the batteries at a different level. And to Jagdeep's point, I mean, we are looking at those batteries to cost a lot less than they are right now. And so can you imagine if the TCO is better now, and if there are some subsidies to help pay, for the higher sticker price, then, in 4 or 5 years from now, with the solid state batteries, we think that the TCO is going to be way better, and probably the cost of electric will become very, very close to the one of the diesel with all the other benefits it has. So I think the future looks good.
Good. Joachim, 5 to 6 years. Does that sound right to you?
I wouldn't want to speculate on the exact timing, but I share Mark's view that it should be short term. It can't be a long term subsidy from the regulators. But I share the view of the Canadian example and the US example. Let me offer a European example. Right, just the other day, it was made clear that in Germany, you can buy an electric truck. And Germany as a nation will subsidize 80% of the differential between the cost of the electric truck and the cost of the diesel truck. Then, and in addition, if you create, to your point, Laurence, before, electrical infrastructure, for instance, in your Home Depot, the government will subsidize 80% of that as well, and moreover will subsidize 50% of all the associated costs. Environmental investigations, etc., to make it happen. So I think it's not a coincidence that these things are happening now. I think they are welcome. In the long run, I want to emphasize, and I believe Mark would share my view there, we need to be on our own, and we will be on our own as an industry because of all the good reasons and all the costs coming down and the electric, TCO kind of parity that we're talking about. Again, it will be different for different countries over time. It will be different for different applications over time. It will be different for different technologies, but the long-term trend is clear.
Very good. Laurence, 5 to 6 years, do we think we need a longer time sort of framework of supports to do what you intend to do with greening transportation?
No, actually, this is really a good target. And when we see what happened currently in many countries, we are on this target. So I gave the example of Paris, 2025, 100% of the buses will be clean buses. In London, the TfL, Transport for London, has some kind of same plan. It's not 25, it's 27 or 30, but more or less, this is the same target. In France, all the PTA are working on that. Even in Saudi Arabia, whereby the diesel is everywhere, they are working on the energy transition, not through, actually they are working on two main sort of energy, which is the solar energy, of course, and the gas energy. So this is something that is reasonable. EU, as Joachim mentioned it through the illustration of Germany, EU is really pushing in every country for this transition. Canada is pushing, Australia is pushing, Saudi Arabia is pushing, Canada is, the US are pushing. So I think if it's not 5 to 6 years, but it's 7 to 8 years, I mean that will be a great success for our planet, for all of us, and our planet deserves it, basically.
This is very helpful to hear, and this is a very different conversation than we would have been having even 2 years ago. Even 2 years ago, we would be talking about a long, multi-political administration commitment, maybe something that was stretching out decades. This is something that even in Laurence, your sort of extended horizon is still within this decade. And that's actually, we've got 5 minutes left, and that's where I'm going to start wrapping it up. Briefly from each of you. It's the year 2031, so we're 10 years on from now. We've had 10 years of doing what we do. We're coming back and we're having a discussion. What does green transport look like? How far have we gotten? What does it look like 10 years from now? And Jagdeep, I'll begin with you. We've got 1 minute each, and we can close up on time.
Yeah, so I mean, focusing on the consumer market, we would hope that with the emergence of solid-state batteries, that again narrow the gap with combustion engines in terms of range and charge times and costs, that a very significant fraction of the overall fleet would be electrified. Our goal will be to see multiple tens of percent of the overall fleet be all electric. And I think if we're aggressive, the number could be potentially a lot bigger than that. And different forecasts are different. It's always very hard, as Joachim said, to predict the future. But at the end of the day, we have to do this, as Laurence said. The planet, in some ways, depends on it. And I think that there's a pretty good chance that with the breakthroughs that are on the horizon, that we will be able to get to a much more significant fraction of the overall market be electrified.
Very good. Joachim, 1 minute, looking back on 2031.
I would say already today for the Volvo Group, all buses are electrified. So obviously in 2031, they will all be electrified as well. On the truck side, as you pointed out, Nat, it's a quite small part that is electrified today. We have made a commitment in the Volvo Group that in the year 2030, more than 35% of all buses that we sell will be electrified. All trucks that we sell will be electrified. And what that means is, of course, that in certain regions, like for instance, Canada or the Nordic region, as a few examples, it will be much more than that. It will be more than half of everything that we sell and serve, right? And also already today, we have electrified construction equipment that will increase. So I will, without quoting a lot of numbers, I will just say this. This is the challenge of our generation. We are committed to do it, and we need to do it together in the industry, across the value chain, and together with the rest of society.
Very good. Mark, 1 minute.
Sure, Nat. We'll see ranges over 1,000 miles on a single charge. So the long haul and this whole thing about, the fuel cells and everything, I think this is going to go away. We'll see some very fast charging as well, like very, very fast. Same time that you need right now to refuel your car, a few minutes, and you're done. So even if you'll have the option, between am I buying, more kilowatt hour, or am I charging within 5-10 minutes? I see also a sticker price being equal to the one of diesel right now. And, diesel is going to go away because, the resale value is going to be nothing. Nobody will like to buy them, at some point. So I see that we will be at least 50% of all the trucks and buses will be electrified, and I hope it's going to be 100%. And for all of the society and also the OEM and for everyone, I mean, this is a huge TAM, and it's not a one takes all. I mean, there's a lot of room for everyone, and this is why we're welcoming all the OEMs to go electric.
Very good. I like that challenge too of 1,000-mile range. Laurence, the last word for you.
3 things.
Okay.
First, in 10 years from now, let's have a dream. Shared mobility will be by far the most used mobility, so it won't be any more individual mobility, and this is a major shift. Second, the shared mobility will be 100% based on clean energy with all the technology that you mentioned, and the technology are there. So technology is there. We need to work on the clean energy also to provide the energy to this technology. And third, and this might be a little bit strange. We talk about transport, we talk about demobility, we talk about technology. Let's talk about demobility and the future design of cities, a 15-minute city whereby everything is at 15 minutes and not 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, just to also work on the distance, the time you spend in mobility. So 3 main things.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's a lovely way for us to leave this. We're right on time, everyone. I want to thank my panel, Mark, Laurence, Joachim, Jagdeep, for joining me. And thank you to the Conference for hosting us. A really thorough conversation. I think we have a lot of insight to gather from this. I'm going to go take my own notes, as I usually do after this. And I hope you're doing all the same. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next year.